Titanic going down with the third class.
An NHD Project by Ava Wingard and Dawson Brown.
It was Thomas Andrews who was the architect of the Titanic.
The Harland and Wolff Shipyard in Belfast, Ireland held the building of the Titanic.
Sir Edward John Smith was the proud captain of Titanic. The Titanic passengers were experiencing segregation by how much money they had. The first class had the most money, which gave them better rooms, better access to the bathtub, fancier meals, and better access to the Titanic deck. The second class had good money, but not as much as the first class. They also received better benefits.
The third class didn't have much money, which limited them to what they want and could do on the Titanic. They had good meals, but were more basic than the first class. The third class had limited access to the decks on the Titanic. Let's go into more detail about the first class rooms that were offered to them. Their location was near the top where the rocking of the ship wasn't felt as much. Their rooms were called parlor suites. These rooms had wardrobe rooms, private baths, and private hallways. The first class also had telephones, heaters, lamps that did not tip over, and bells that get their butler's attention.
Let's go into more detail about the third class rooms that were offered to them. Their location was near the bottom where the rocking of the ship was felt more. In the third class rooms, the passengers shared bunk beds, which was 6 people to a room. They also had to share bathrooms and only had 2 bathtubs for the entire third class. One was for women and one was for men. There were 710 third class passengers, so you can imagine how dirty those 2 baths were. On April 10, 1912, the Titanic started sailing. There were 2,208 passengers and only enough lifeboats to help 1,178 people on the ship. This was about 1/3 of the entire population on board. There were 899 crew and officers. There were 329 people in first class, 285 people in second class, and 710 people in third class.
As the Titanic was going fast, they saw an iceberg and ordered the crew to start turning the ship. The person in the crow's nest saw the iceberg too late, which made the Titanic scrape the side of the iceberg. Because of this, the watertight compartments of the Titanic began to flood. This made the Titanic begin to sink quickly. The tragedy of the third class was that they were trapped on the lower floors. Because the first and second class had priority, the third class was trapped behind locked gates and most of them were not helped.
Frederick and Augusta Goodwin and their 6 children were from London, England. The entire family died from the shipwreck. They were third-class passengers. The third-class passengers were not allowed on certain parts of the ship. All adult males and older male children had to be separated from the rest of their family. This made escaping the third class was nearly impossible for big families.
In the article, Titanic Survivor Story Going Down with the Titanic in the Third Class, an interview with Ellen Hakarian tells the story of the night the Titanic started sinking. Ellen Hakarian said, "My husband Pico and I heard a scraping sound and felt the ship shudder. A few moments later, the throb of the engine stopped. Pico jumped out of bed and said, 'I'm going to see what happened.' When I stepped out of my bed, the room was tilted." Ellen said she went to look for Pico with her friends. One of her friends said, "All the doors are locked." Ellen quickly discovered that her friend was telling the truth. All of the doors were locked for the third-class passengers. Ellen survived because of one ship steward who helped her and a few others to lifeboats.
72 people could fit on each lifeboat. Unfortunately, a few lifeboats sank after being released into the water. The collapsible lifeboats were the most kind of lifeboats that sank. If each lifeboat had 72 people in them, most of the people on board would have survived. There were 3,327 people on the Titanic, including crew members. About all lifeboats could save most people. There isn't any first, second, and third class today because it considered rude to call someone third class because of how much money they had. Nowadays, we have no class assigned to us. We are all equal.
When the Titanic went down, only 706 people survived, which means 1,503 people were killed in the icy waters of the Titanic's grave. A lot of those 1,503 people were third-class passengers. Because of the Titanic's tragedy in 1912, ship regulations have been established. The Titanic's tragedy became today's triumph of keeping ship passengers safe and educating crew members before the ship set sails. One source says, a new regulation of 1913 requires all vessels to carry enough lifeboats for every passenger. An iceberg patrol was set up by the Coast Guard as well.